Sorry for letting you wait a bit. I have 3 talks in the afternoon and hadn't prepared the last one, which is hands-on, so I had to spend a few more minutes on the Raspberry Pis. Switching gears from the very small devices to our most desktop-y devices that SUSE supports these days, which are the point-of-service devices. In the next 30 minutes or so, I want to give you a short introduction into our current roadmap around Linux on the point of service, and also, even beyond what we have on the slides, give you a bit of an outlook how the future is going to look like when we talk using SUSE Manager in a retail environment, and the future beyond the current SLEPOS 11 product line. So my name is Joe Werner. I'm mainly the product manager for SUSE Manager, but I'm also standing in today for point of service because my colleague Abhinav, who is now mostly leading SLEPOS, couldn't come to the US this week. Up? Okay. Sure. Better like that, or should I? Okay. So, first of all, what is SUSE Linux Enterprise Point of Service? Let me ask the audience, who is running it or selling it? Who is planning to sell it? Okay. So you're basically familiar with what we're talking about. Of course, it's part of the comprehensive product family we have. It's one of the flavors of SUSE Linux Enterprise. But it has a few special attributes. I think we can keep the part about why it makes sense to run Linux on the point of service relatively short. In general, we are fully aware of the fact that in retail, there are quite a few special challenges. There's more cost pressure. Devices are in the shops longer than they would usually be used, let's say, in an office desktop environment. A new trend is that you have all those old devices that you want to keep, but still you have to secure them, because now we know that retail is a preferred target for any kind of data breaches. You have all those PCI DSS regulations and so on, so you have to bridge those gaps. Sometimes outdated hardware that has to be integrated. If you look at our current roadmap, you'll see that we have catered a lot to stability and supporting relatively old hardware. We are now also going to offer, starting November, December, solutions for brand new hardware like Intel Skylake and shortly after Kaby Lake and Cannon Lake platforms. Well, as I've briefly mentioned, there are quite a few business drivers in retail that may lead you to using a Linux-based offering, reducing and simplifying the licensing cost. For example, with SUSE Linux Enterprise Point of Service, we have portable subscriptions. You don't have to buy a new subscription when you buy a new device. You're pretty flexible whether you want to just take a subscription with you, and with a yearly or 3-yearly or 5-yearly subscriptions. You also have the choice of either buying for the whole life cycle of the hardware or being flexible in terms of renewing every year and growing or shrinking your estates. We have an integrated solution that also brings you Linux to the in-store servers with also pretty attractive price points for those store servers, and with the possibility to basically run the same OS for the whole stack, including your data center. It's much easier to be compliant and secure. We have customers that have been PCI DSS compliant for years with Linux, and it has been a much smoother ride than on other platforms. And then increasingly, the topic of centralized management is of course something that you want to look into. SUSE Linux Enterprise Point of Service already provides you quite some management capabilities in terms of setting up everything centrally from a directory and then basically letting these configurations distribute down to your clients. With the introduction of the SUSE Manager for retail, we'll have even more capabilities there. Yeah, and then updating, that's really the thing. If you look at how Windows images are built for retail devices, in many cases, the instructions say, okay, you have to install this. Then you have to make sure you're on that particular version of the .NET framework. Then you have to do this and that. It's very hard to replicate. And then if you have different hardware, you will have to rebuild your images and inject some new drivers. It's very complicated. We are using the same technologies that we are using for the server. So we have very solid image building tools that you can use to build your images. We have the Linux kernel and its driver ecosystem that's more or less self-configuring, so it will detect hardware. And for newer hardware, we have extra KMP packages that we deliver specifically for point of service, like we have enabled the Bay Trail platform on that relatively old 11 kernel, specifically for retail environments, to keep your estate on one single version. Yeah, and of course with Linux you have vendors that offer you a subscription that you could even use after not paying anymore. So you're very flexible. You only pay for what you want. If you want our support, if you are happy with it, and all of the retailers we've been working with have indicated that they are very happy with what they are getting, then you can stay with us. And of course, there's no hard lock-in in terms of licensing and so on. We lock you in with quality and happiness. That's really the idea. So the SLEPOS platform is a three-tiered architecture where we have an admin server with a central LDAP-based administration and also image building capabilities, and then the branch office platform where we do all the local infrastructure, so it can act as a full infrastructure server with DNS and DHCP, Pixie boot environment for your stores, netted network. But there are many different ways of setting up SLEPOS. So we have customers with completely different topologies where they may build images in the labs, preload machines, and then roll them out. And there's no branch server at all, for example, all different kinds of things. Yeah, and this all with the stability and openness of Linux. Yeah, I'll skip that. Just to visualize again how the architecture looks like, and if you've worked with it, you're pretty familiar, I guess. The admin server, image building server can be on the same machine. There will be a slight change once we are talking /12, because /12 images can't be built on an 11 server. So you'll have to do that on an extra virtual machine or physical machine. But then you can use those same images with the /11 based admin and branch servers. The branch servers in the stores, obviously, and then the POS device is connected to those. And as I've mentioned, there are architectures where the branch server is on the same machine as the admin server, either by bringing in an admin service to the stores or by having, if you have enough bandwidth, one centralized one. It's just not really a good idea to do Pixie boot over a wide area network, because the TFTP protocol acknowledges every single package that goes over the wire, and that can take a while if you have like 400 milliseconds of a delay. Yeah, so that's basically repeating this again. We have the admin server, we have the branch server. One of the cool things about the SLEPOS architecture is that this technology, even a couple of years ago, basically gave you a way of completely automating how those branch servers are configured. You basically manage everything from the LDAP directory on the admin server. Do we have to switch it on?
Just make sure it's recording.
Okay. Okay. Then the branch server takes up the role of booting all the other devices. Over the years, we've done a lot of improvements, like we are able to distribute updates as deltas. So if you have the previous version of an image already on your branch servers, you can save a lot of bandwidth with the delta features and so on. With one of the recent versions, which is SP3, so for 11, it's still a bit behind what you would see on enterprise server for the data center. We introduced a front end for creating the basic configuration for the LDAP. So things have improved a bit in terms of being more visual, but that's really something we want to improve on even further, and that's why we are talking about bringing SUSE Manager to retail, and more about that in a minute. So before we dive into this SLES12 future, on the SLES 11 code base, SLEPOS really provides you the longest stable life cycles of all the SUSE products integrated into one part number. So you don't have to buy long-term service pack support for your clients. Just with a normal SUSE Enterprise Point of Service subscription, as long as you are at least on 11 SP3, we'll maintain you and support you until March 31st, 2022. So for another 6 years almost, 5.5 years.
So that applies to Service Pack 3?
This applies to anything starting with Service Pack 3. So if you're still on SP2, to benefit from that, you'd have to upgrade to the SP3. So there is no SP4 for those clients, but we have shipped and we are still shipping updates based on the SP3 base. As I said, we've even done some hardware enablement, which is not usual that late in the game, but for retail we did it for the Bay Trail platform. And even for Skylake, we have some support for some dedicated machines from some vendors. So if that is something of interest, we can always talk about the details. In that particular market, it's all about individual machines and individual functionality because the standard hardware roadmaps that we know from servers don't usually apply. When we talk to Intel and they say, okay, we are going to have, let's say, the Kaby Lake platform or the Skylake platform, they will mainly talk about the server features, and then as you know, the server CPUs are usually like half a year trailing the desktop ones. That's when they go from 4-core to 8-core or 16-core and so on, and when they have the processes. So this is something where we have to work very closely with the vendors and also based on customer feedback, and then push Intel to say, okay, this is something that we are going to help you with so that you also get the graphics drivers in, or the touchscreen drivers, or whatever we need. Yeah, so this is for stability. If you already have SLES 11, all the hardware that is pre-Skylake, so anything from last year and maybe up to early this year, and quite a few of the models that are still in production are covered by 11. For Skylake and beyond, that's really where we look into the 12 platform, and I'll have a slide on that later, of course. On the server, the story is only slightly different. So that's again on the client, just to wrap it all up. Of course, in the last couple of years of that support, when we are talking about 2 years before end of life, this is merely reactive. We don't expect you to come up with a brand new box that just ships with a chipset we don't even know yet and assume that this will still run. It's really about keeping stuff that you install this year or early next year and running it for the rest of that life on that same image, and being sure that we provide you with emergency security fixes and all those things, but not feature enhancements or anything fancy. So that's the same in a picture again. Yeah, it's a very long line. That's basically the message here. On the server, you get the same time frame, but on the server, we are more aligned with the SLES standard roadmaps. So you have to go to SP4 if you don't want to pay for extra LTSS. And for the last 3 years, starting 2019, you'd also have to pay extra for LTSS. Talk to your sales reps if you want to negotiate agreements that fit into your specific environments. This is sometimes confusing because we have those two different stories, but it really mirrors how the rest of the market works. So if you look at Windows servers or other Linux servers, the life cycles of the server products usually are much shorter than the ones for those embedded devices and POS devices. So as you see, you have the same life cycle until 22, but you have to switch to SP4 to make use of the full life cycle. And when you reach that yellow part of the bar, that's when long-term service pack support as a paid-for option kicks in. Yeah, I think I'll keep those ones pretty short. This just explains how the rules are, and it's mainly about the fact that, of course, we don't, as I mentioned, we don't support brand new hardware generations that haven't been certified. So the last machines that have been certified are a few Skylake boxes this year. And that's the same for deployments. The idea is that, of course, a mere replacement is always going to work. So if you have a fully certified machine, it breaks, and you replace it by the same box, no problem at all. But the idea is not to replace old hardware with new hardware and then report new bugs. It's really about machines that have been deployed in between now and 2019, and then running them until end of life. Now, in terms of the SLEPOS infrastructure, I've mentioned that there are a few different ways of setting things up. One of the things that you can do, and I know that there's at least one large retailer in North America that's making use of this feature. You can use SUSE Studio on-site or your own, basically, usually you would go with an on-site. SUSE Studio is our graphical build tool for building images, and you can then import those images into the admin server. So that's an alternative to using the built-in YAST-based image building capabilities. It's interesting if you have more than just one admin working with the build tool, for example. It has a bit of a project management where you can have your own build projects and can manage them in a nice way. It's also very approachable. SUSE Studio is going to go through quite some change in the next couple of years. Anyone who knows our open build service that we have been offering for years, mainly for the open source community, but we are also using it internally for building images and RPM packages. We want to reuse that technology and add the features that Studio has, like the more graphical user experience for configuring images, because that really will give you a tool for building any kind of things. It will be extended to basically be able to build RPMs, other Linux packages. I'm sure we will have support for the new style package formats like FastPack and Snappy and however they are called, Linux images of all kinds, containers, and so on. That's really the comprehensive build solution. And then building physical images for point of service is just going to be one of the use cases. So, yeah, this shows how that scenario would look like, with the Pixie boot included, of course. And then the other option, and that's really where the future is heading, is making use of SUSE Manager. What you can do today is just augment an existing SLEPOS environment with a SUSE Manager installation on top of it. So SUSE Manager can work in parallel to the admin server. There is some logic already that makes sure that if you redeploy an image through SLEPOS, it will not show up twice in SUSE Manager, but it will be reassigned to the same identity in the SUSE Manager database. Going forward, the plan is to start replacing the admin and branch server technology by the SUSE Manager component, so the SUSE Manager server and SUSE Manager proxy, and also making use of the new technology that we are introducing as part of our inclusion of SALT. You've heard a lot about SALT. Today we had the presentation from Erin that I think made it pretty clear what SALT can do. And of course, in case of a retail infrastructure, we are not talking oranges and apples and triangles, but we are talking point of service devices, branch servers. But you, for the first time in the history of our retail offerings, you will be able to manage your whole estate in real time as long as it's connected. Of course, if there's no connectivity, it's not going to be real time, but it will still be able to pick up things later that happened in the meantime. You'll be able to query your whole infrastructure. So just asking all the machines in your whole estate, whether they are running out of memory or whether they have a problem with a hard disk, like checking for health data on your storage devices. Things like that will become really, really easy. Reporting on uptime. Also distributing not just RPMs, package updates, but if you look at scenarios like digital signage where you have to deliver large video files down to the stores. So this will also be part of the story. One of the things that we are going to focus on specifically for retail that we will add to SUSE Manager is making sure that we can work through lines that are low bandwidth, where you may have some traffic shaping issues, where you only want to, like, say, 20% of the line dedicated to management traffic, and the rest should be dedicated to your transactions. Or if you have, I know in some cases you even have like satellite uplinks and stuff where you need a broadcast model, like in the morning you broadcast the images down to the stores, things like that. We'll look into those scenarios, pick the ones that are most common, and for the others we will have consulting-based solutions. And with SALT we have a solid framework that helps us with all kind of automation that we will leverage here. Yeah, let's now talk a bit about the Point of Service 12 roadmap. So starting this Christmas, basically, we will offer Point of Service clients based on Enterprise Server 12 Service Pack 2. So that's the brand new product that we've announced today. It will be 64-bit only, so if you have devices that are only 32-bit, you see that there's still a roadmap for maintaining those devices for another couple of years. But for new devices, the support from the vendors, from the IHVs, is only for 64-bit. And it's we've made the decision when we released SLES 12 GA about 2.5 years ago, that SLES 12 is 64-bit only. So that, of course, also affects Point of Service. It will support the latest Intel platform, so that's Skylake. To some extent, also the Atom-based ones, although we don't recommend using them in retail. We've seen that, especially with Bay Trail and Braswell, performance wasn't that great. So we had a lot of customers complain that those machines are really not beefy enough. They are really low power, but they are just like if you have two screens to drive and so on, they can get a bit of a pain. But anyway, those platforms that are used by the vendors we work with, which is HP, Toshiba, Wincor Nixdorf, NCR obviously, Fujitsu, we make sure that the devices they want to support on Linux work, and we have been building a dedicated team because, as I've mentioned, Intel isn't really helping anyone with those devices unless they are really mobile. And then again, if they sell them for mobile devices, usually the life cycles are more in the 2 or 3 year framework. So basically the idea is that after 2 or 3 years you'll throw away that device, which is not what retailers do. Again, we will have an extended life cycle. At this early point where we start with SP2, we can't fully guarantee that you can stay on SP2 forever, but it'll be much more robust than the standard SLES lifecycle where we have a service pack every year now and where you'd basically have to update every couple of months. So we want to stay on SP2 for at least about 3 years. And then depending on how the hardware roadmaps look, whether it's possible to still use that base for Intel hardware that's released in 3 years from now, we may even be able to stay on the platform or not. But that's always a bit of a look into the crystal ball, yeah. So going back to the story around SUSE Manager, basically the plan is to go from this architecture that we all know to an architecture that uses SUSE Manager, and we've just pointed out a few of the things that SUSE Manager is going to be able to do for you on top of what we have. It has a UI, so that's a very important thing. Right now with the admin server, the only thing you can use is an LDAP browser, and you see all the machines in your LDAP tree, which is nice, and some people have built around nice web front ends around it or so, but it's kind of limiting. We will offer import of this data into SUSE Manager, so if you start moving away from the old infrastructure, you won't have to re-enter all your data. We will import those into SUSE Manager. SUSE Manager has a client inventory, so in the UI you see all the clients with all the hardware data, all the software that's installed, and we will be able to extend that. So in case it's, if you go into topics like digital signage and so on, we can also then expose things like, okay, what video is running? Maybe even running it, but definitely what's installed on the machine. Like, is it on the latest content? Or if you have to distribute price lists or anything, we can also make use of that. Remote execution with the SALT framework, basically anything you can think of, from just running shell scripts or bash commands on all the machines in a specific store or in all stores to very specific custom-made modules that you may come up with for specific purposes. Like using your printers in the store or whatever. Everything can be remote executed and automated. Monitoring, I've mentioned that already. First of all, using SALT, so you can query your estate and ask about facts on the hardware, like what's the disk space that's left and all those things. There are so-called beacons that we also saw today in the presentation. In my 4 o'clock or 4:15 presentation, I'm going to show you how this works with the Raspberry Pis and the Sense Head module that has temperature sensors. But it could also make use of the temperature sensors in a PC or POS device, for example. But also part of the package is just traditional monitoring by including the Izinga monitoring server, which is a Nagios compatible full-fledged monitoring solution, and this comes as part of the package. Patching, the way you currently would patch a SLEPOS environment if you don't make use of another tool like SUSE Manager is that you would rebuild a new image. It's very efficient because you can then basically only sync the delta to the stores, but yeah, you have to rebuild an image and you have to reinstall that image on your machines. This has been very effective, but we acknowledge that in some cases you may prefer a model where you have a base image that you only update every couple of months, or maybe once a year, and then just patch individual, like the kernel or security patches, and roll those out. And that's, of course, then also possible with SUSE Manager. Content distribution, that's what I've mentioned, you know, the videos and all that stuff. Scoping of systems, that's another salt-based feature. Because we have all the data about all those systems, we can ask questions like, okay, which machines are running a certain kernel version, or give me all the machines that are IBM, Schulpros, whatever, or NCR, XYZ, and only target those. So if you know you need to update some driver on only those boxes that are a specific model, it's very easy to scope them and address them and only target those machines with a remote command. And you can always dry run those things, so you can just create the report, look at it, and say, okay, that's what I want. Or you can execute it right away. So the naming for those components are not really, it's not set in stone yet, but we expect SUSE Manager, the main server, to be mostly unchanged from what we have today, potentially being branded for point of service, but that's really the standard offering, and pricing-wise it's also going to play in the same ballpark. Then there will be something that currently working title is SUSE Manager Branch Infrastructure Manager or Branch Infrastructure Server, that will be geared towards being a branch server. So it will come at a price point that's attractive for running in branches, maybe a small and a large edition, depending on whether it's a whole department store or just a small outlet with 2 cache registers. And then, of course, the POS clients. So this is an upsell. It'll add additional management features on top of the current offering. But that also makes it very flexible for you to decide, okay, do I need all those features, yes or no? Yeah, that's basically the end of the slides I have. I have, of course, the overview of more information that you can get. There's the web pages, the support pages. If you want to know about the hardware that is supported, there's the yes search. If you don't find the hardware you're looking for in that database, make sure you just talk to your both the hardware guys that you're working with, so your IHVs and your SUSE representative. And in most cases, in the last couple of weeks, we've always found a way of letting them ship the hardware to Nuremberg and fix it, and find a way of supporting that hardware. For a customer in Switzerland, we just did that a couple of weeks ago, and it was really like, we got the call, we have to get this supported, in 2 weeks we need an answer, and they shipped us the box and we took care of it. Partner software catalog, there's not that much POS software in there yet. Again, that's something when you have specific needs, you have a software that doesn't run on Linux at all, or that doesn't run on the specific SLEPOS version that you want to use, make sure that the vendor knows, make sure that we know. We have a dedicated team that can hunt down those vendors and talk to them and say, okay, there's a business case from customer A, customer B, but we have to know about those. So because it's just, if it's just one anecdotal story, it's usually not enough. But if you know that it's something that a lot of customers really want, or that would make life easier for them as a software vendor, then that's always a good thing. Yeah, I think I've basically covered what you can expect. The story around retail sometimes sounds boring because the main motif has always been stability, making sure that it's a rock-solid platform for you to run. But we have new technology now that enables us to deliver new stuff. So if you have ideas around making management of your devices easier, in terms of monitoring devices, what exactly you want to be monitored and what should be configured out of the box. Or another thing that we are going to provide with next year's release of SUSE Manager is a framework for graphical visualization. So think of a map of your data centers in the world, a map of all your locations where you can drill down. You see the red lights go on go off if something is wrong. Drilling down into floor plans and seeing, okay, this machine is down, I have to send someone there. Those things we can do, but we need your input, we need your collaboration on that. We've already started some of that, like the gentleman in the first row. We are working in South Africa on scenarios for that bandwidth throttling and making sure that we can work over thin lines. Those things, yeah, I mean, the idea really is collecting these information, those data points and providing products. Or if it's really just a one-off custom solutions that are then maintainable by a consulting organization. Yeah, I think we are at the point where we can open for questions.
You mentioned SLEPOS 12 POS compliant. Is there any plans for SLEPOS 12 on the branch server or admin server?
Not at this point. So the message is that once you are in SLEPOS 12 territory, we go with the SUSE Manager-based solution, which is on SLEPOS 12. It's not completely out of the question, but it would probably be a design where we say, okay, you get a SLEPOS 12 installed, and we provide you with a container or virtual machine that runs your 11 runtime, more or less unchanged. On the branch server and the admin server, yeah. So, but you won't have to roll it out globally in one big deployment. The licensing would be similar to what you have today, but SUSE Manager, of course, with the extra patching features and so on, for the branch server will be a bit more expensive than the current branch server, yeah. So that's one of the things that we're still trying to work out with sales, whether we still need like an entry-level offering that's really just the old stuff on SLEPOS 12. At the moment, we think, because a lot of the retailers have already started to implement SUSE Manager on top of it, that we won't need that. But again, you know, our slogan is we adapt, you succeed. So if we get feedback that we need that, we could always bring it back. It's just in terms of the technology that we've been using in SLEPOS, it's time for change. I mean, we are talking about technology that is rock solid, but that dates back to the last century, actually. That is at a point where we now, with the always-on message buses we can do in Salt, for example, we can just do so much more and give you instant access to your infrastructure. And that's stuff that we can't do with current SLEPOS.
And in that new design, SUSE Studio Key integrated in the SUSE Manager, that whole package is done as well.
So SUSE Studio, as you know it today, can build SLEPOS 12 images, and this will include those new client images. Going forward, as I've mentioned, SUSE Studio will see a technology shift as well from what we have today to an open build service based solution that also can build images with a graphical front end. And that, again, will be part of the story. We don't know exactly whether it's going to be bundled into the management server. That's one option that we certainly consider, or whether it's another component that would be separately priced. In any case, SUSE Manager will be able to trigger builds. So if you just want to have an automated build infrastructure and you're fine with saying, okay, I define my machine in SUSE Manager with all the channels that I need. I have a Kiwi profile that picks this all up. That's going to be part of the solution. And we are working on doing this not just for point of service, but also in terms of Docker containers and all those things going forward. So now I'm getting lost. I think you were first, yeah?
So we have SUSE Manager, we have SUSE Studio, we have OBS for the packaging, RPNs are still in the process of adopting all. So we're running SLEPOS. But I guess, so with this feature model, are you saying the SLEPOS admin server would be on, or still interpolation as the delivery mechanism once they reach?
In the long run, it will be gone, but it will be basically merged into the admin in the SUSE Manager server. At the moment, I mean, what it is, it's storing the images and it's storing the LDAP tree and it's triggering those those downloads, and that's something that SUSE Manager can do. SUSE Manager at this point has a few feature gaps that we are fixing, like there are groups, and what you don't have is a hierarchy. So that's one of the things that we want to add to show like a multi-tiered hierarchy in the web front end, and that's what I'm talking about when we talk visualization. So like in the LDAP tree, where you can really have those stores and you have your countries and your cities and all those things, that's something that we will add. Yeah.
So the branch, going to the SUSE Manager model, will the branch server also act as a proxy?
Yes. It'll be a proxy. It'll be, yeah, I mean, what we're not sure yet about the salt topology, whether it's just going to forward stuff to the master or whether it's going to be a local master. For those scenarios where we know that the line is very unreliable, we'll probably have a local master that can be used to kind of schedule stuff that you do once it's offline, or maybe there's a local admin that can get access to the machine. But yeah, it'll be a caching server. It'll be a proxy for as long as you're online, basically for all the message traffic that goes up if you have events like monitoring. But as you know, I mean, if you have a lot of monitoring traffic and you have thin lines, you'll have to aggregate, and then data will be a bit stale, but it'll, yeah, exactly.
I just have a question about slightly different. You can say you support 64 on the client side, but not 32 for the well.
Yes.
But you did mention also that you work closely with a vendor named NCR. They created the driver set for these registers in order to
In general, yes. There have been a few challenges around the Java pause. That's a thing that we are fully aware of. Yeah. I mean, that's something that we are aware of, and to some extent, it's taking the vendors by surprise. I mean, it wasn't really a surprise because we have had those roadmaps up for years, but that industry is really ticking a bit differently. I mean, for them, Linux is not always where they've come from. They've adopted it for some good reasons, but we are building up more capacities in our team. So we have, for next year's planning, we are planning to have a dedicated engineering team for the hardware support, because we know that Intel isn't just doing the job for us. We have a dedicated ISV relationship manager for point of service, and also on the hardware side, we will have alliance managers on the technical side that will drive those discussions. And we are aware that in retail, it's not like in the server business where we say, okay, guys, you want us to run on your machines, tell us, basically ship us the drivers and we'll integrate. But we have to help them, we have to work with them.
Because we find out that this has always been an issue for us.
Absolutely, yeah.
We can upgrade the servers whenever we can, but the registers are always slightly behind. And we're waiting on drivers, and we have to go through the testing cycle, which takes a long time. So by that time, we are ready for this one. We already moved up to some slice 13, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
This is where we're finding the gaps between the Java files on the clients and the updates that we're getting.
Yeah. So I can't promise you that everything is going to be fixed overnight, but that's exactly the topics we are working on, and that new colleague of mine, Abhinav, is specifically working on those projects. He's reached out to all the sales guys like Stuart and his colleagues, collecting feedback. It wasn't always pleasant discussions, as you can imagine, but we hear the message, and we are already pushing for funding for next year to improve that situation. Yeah. Any more questions? I mean, you can always reach me through your sales contacts if you have any questions. I'm also coming over to the US or any place you want, if it's not just Canada. Why not? Sure. You guys are one of my favorite customers. All of you are. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, we have had a tradition where at SUSE where the product management really wants to talk to customers as often as we can. Of course, in many cases, it's easier for us to do that in Switzerland or France or Germany. But yeah, as Stuart knows, if yeah.
We love to have you.
We have phones and WebEx in the US too.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, of course. Yeah, I mean, we can do live sessions. Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely the plan for next year. Okay. Thank you, guys. If you are interested in more of the, the SUSE Manager stuff, the SaltStack stuff, there are other sessions, technical sessions, more visionary sessions during this day, but also Wednesday and Thursday. You'd be more than welcome to join another session that I'm doing later. Thank you, guys.